the podcast nowhere near Hollywood. It's Afternoon Coffee with Mike and Tim.
Hey, that was good. What I was thinking was maybe welcome to the Afternoon Coffee Podcast with Mike and Tim.
Nice try, boys, but this is how it should sound. This is the Afternoon Coffee Podcast with Mike and Tim.
All right, thanks, Heather, and welcome to episode 16. Can you believe this is 16, Tim?
I can't believe it, man.
I can't. Well, you don't have to believe it. It is. It's. We are here today. We're going to interview three people: Austin, Dallas, and Shelly Shepard, and they have a very, very interesting story to tell. I think you're going to enjoy this. This is another story to where things did not look so good at first, and it's turned out to be a fantastic thing, and it's blessed a lot of different lives. So, Shelly, Dallas, Austin, glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, everything kind of changed in your life on January 2003. Why don't you kind of get us up to speed on what life was like before then?
Well, January 30th, 2003, life was going great with our family. We were very much into just sports and activities with the kids. We had two kids, 10 and 12, or soon to be 12. And we were just going along with life, and sports had kind of become our thing with us playing tennis, Dallas and I playing on tennis teams, and our daughter involved in cheer. And Austin was involved in sports with football, baseball, basketball, taekwondo, you name it. We were doing it.
That's great. That's great. Typical U.S. American family. Yeah.
Yes. Very active. Austin, do you want to say something about that?
Just I was very, very athletic, very gifted in any sport I pursued. I love playing sports. It was a shock when that baseball hit me in the head, and yeah.
Well, tell us about that. What happened that day, January 30th of 2003?
So on January 30th, 2003, a thrown baseball was thrown from the outfield, and I was at home plate waiting to catch the ball. When the ball went past the outfielder into the outfield, he went running after it. So I focused my attention on first base, caught his ball. But as I was turning around for the ball in the bucket from the coach, the ball from the outfield was already thrown. It was a high lob up in the air. And when it came down, it smacked me right in the left temple of my head. Yeah, from this, I suffered from epidermal hematoma, bleeding on the brain, went to a coma for 2.5 months.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So Dallas was practicing that night. Dallas was one of the coaches, assistant coach. We lived in Port Charlotte, Florida. And Dallas, you want to explain what happened as well? I was there as well, but Dallas was the assistant coach at the time.
Yeah, I mean, we were just, this was actually our second Little League practice for the year. So you have a bunch of 8 to 10-year-olds running around, and we're trying to herd cats and trying to teach the basics of baseball. And so I was actually doing some batting practice over on another side of the field, and Austin and his coach were just doing some infield practice. And as Austin mentioned, he threw a ball to shortstop. It went through his legs, which is kind of appropriate, and that's why we're there to practice. And so it goes in the outfield. Austin had turned his attention to be at first base, and it was catching that ball when the kid from the outfield threw a ball, and just a little lobber by an 8-year-old, innocent, not trying to do anything. It just baseball practice. And I remember hearing kind of a little of the commotion, and Austin, I look back, and he's holding the side of his head. And his mom happened to be there, which she's normally not at practice because she was usually running around, carting our daughter around to cheer practice and different things. And Austin wasn't crying. You could tell he was hurting. He was kind of dazed. and we decided, or Shelly and Austin and I, we decided to take him home. And so Shelly and Austin jumped in the car and started heading home. And then we had an ER doctor friend of ours that was, or I obviously worked in the ER, and I'll let Shelly kind of talk about that because I was still at baseball practice at this point.
Of course, because you didn't think it was a big deal, right?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I put it this way: for all the crazy things we've done in life, and playing football, to running with tractors and being out on boats, throwing baseball was not the thing that I thought was going to change our life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Austin was at home, and I let him lay down, which you really probably shouldn't do. And he did wake up, and he threw up all over the floor. And I called our friend back, and I told him that, hey, Austin just threw up. And he said, get him to the emergency room right away. And so he said, I will meet you there. He was having dinner with his family. So off we went. And I get all emotional when I talk about this. It just brings back memories, even though it's been quite some
rightfully so.
time. I believe it's 17 years now. So anyway, I was in the emergency room, and we were trying to get him, I believe it was a CAT scan. And he just kept getting sick as he was laying there, and I didn't even know if he'd even be able to go through it to get the CAT scan, but they did get the CAT scan, and I'm standing behind the gentleman who was reading the CAT scan and reading the results, and I could he kind of looked over his shoulder like, is she seeing what I'm seeing? And there was this huge on the left side of his head, just a indentation, so to speak, of where the blood was just filling very quickly, pushing against the left side of his brain, and that affected the brainstem and the right side of his body. So at that time, I could just see the look on his face. And then our friend had to tell us the bad news that Austin had to be what they thought at the time was to be airlifted to All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. And they induced a coma at that time. And we waited and waited and waited. And it was quite, I even had a priest come into the room while we were sitting there. And I just remember the panic on my face because Dallas hadn't gotten there yet. He was still at practice, not knowing what was going on. Sure. And I just remember, I just had this panic. I'm like, what is he doing here? Like, why is he here? It was just a crazy, crazy time.
So let me ask Austin, at that time, what's your recollection of all this with the CAT scan and all this before you was, airlifted or during the airlift? But tell us from your vantage point, your recollection of things.
Well, to be honest, Tim, going home, going to bed, I just remember that. And then I woke up 2.5 months later in a hospital in Tampa, Florida. But I do remember during that time between when I took a nap and going to Tampa, Florida, having a dream of traveling in our motorhome we had at the time. And I remember seeing a lot of my friends' faces, a lot of close friends who I spent a lot of time with before my accident. And we were going to Stone Mountain, Georgia. And then after that, it just went dark for like a second or two, and then I woke up.
Well, a good memory I'm sure you had that, before you airlifted and all that your mom and dad, but your mom took care of you there while, you threw up, but mom took care of you. And that was a great memory, wasn't it? That
Yes.
Mom was there and taking care of you and your dad. But that you told, I don't know if Dallas, you was there with your wife while he was throwing up or not. Did you say that? I'm not sure, but that you guys, irrelevant, but you guys were there with him. And Austin, you knew that your parents loved you. And that's before you were transported and all that. So you had that in your mind that you had caring parents, and that's good. That's real good. And I can tell that mom is, you'll never get over this. I know mom and dad will never get over this, and it is still a tough thing. But Austin, thank you for obviously being on this show today and sharing your heart. We appreciate you.
Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, there's, obviously always little different aspects, different angles from Austin's, from Shelly's, from mine. When I finally arrived at the hospital, the ER doctor friend of mine, Dr. Frank Colunga, he knew me, so I went into the ER room. Austin's laying on the table, and then all of a sudden he had, the light started going off. He started convulsing on the table. And I remember Frank looked at me and said, "Dallas, you got to get out of the room now."
Oh my.
That's when I knew things are going to get serious. And then it's just total being surreal, what's going on, trying to put things into context. But again, I had, the doctor was a friend of mine. I had all the faith and confidence that he's going to make the best decisions. But it was pretty darn close to losing Austin at that point. We talked about that. So, it just, again, being very surreal. Then we had another family practitioner doctor. He showed up to the hospital, family, friends, everything just started becoming very chaotic in the sense of, what's going on and how do you explain this? And then trying to get Austin airlifted. Unfortunately, they had just airlifted a young girl to All Children's in St. Pete. So it was delayed probably about an hour and a half or 2 hours. Well, I'm like, we can drive there faster than that.
Oh, yeah.
But because of the decisions that were made, they had to wait for her being airlifted. The craziest part about it, the actual surgery was not that big of a deal. It's doing a left side craniotomy, basically just relieving the pressure. But we couldn't find a pediatric neurosurgeon in our area. Nobody wanted to touch a 10-year-old. So that was delayed. So now all of a sudden things are getting compounded. So actually from his accident about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, he didn't get to All Children's until midnight. And basically he was almost gone at that point.
Boy, it's a long 4 hours for you. I just can't even imagine. Now
a long time to get him there. And I remember driving there when they said the helicopter is coming. You can head to the hospital. We had a pastor from our church came, and we headed up to All Children's Hospital. And I remember the doctor or the surgeon was there waiting, and we got there, and he was waiting for us, and anxiously awaiting to do the surgery. So normally they drill a hole and usually do it that way, but they had to do a full left-sided craniotomy because of the urgency of it to get that pressure off right away.
Wow. Well, it's great that they were sitting there waiting. I mean, obviously they understood the seriousness of this issue. So it had to be a long couple of months while he was in a coma that you would explain some of the emotions and what life was actually like during that time.
Well, it's interesting. That was before all the latest technology and FaceTiming and all that. And Dallas and I handle things differently. I'm very social and I communicated a lot with a lot of our friends and family via just texting. And I think we were texting at the time. I can't remember. It's so long ago. But, trying to communicate via phone or what was going on. They didn't have that Caring Bridge site that I knew of at the time. And so, just trying to keep everybody. But we had so many people praying for our family, for Austin especially, all over the world. It was amazing. I mean, just people from Japan and England and all over the United States. We just had no idea, but we just knew it was very trying. But Austin actually got moved from All Children's Hospital to Health South in Rehab Hospital, which is now Encompass Health, in Clearwater, Largo area, the Clearwater Largo Road right off of there, in that area. And so they transported him over, and we were staying at the Ronald McDonald House during the first part of his adventure. And while he lay there in a coma, but he got stable after, what was it, 2.5?
About 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks, he got stable, was stabilized, and then moved to Health South. And my friends from my Bible study that I had all pitched in and cleaned up our room and did did what our duties we had to do at the Ronald McDonald House. They pitched in, washed the sheets, did all that while we went to Health South and got Austin situated there.
Wow.
Now, I was just going to add, during that time, about 10 days into it, I remember the neurosurgeon came in and talked to Shelly and I, and basically said Austin has not responded the way we wanted.
Oh.
Okay, now, and again, when we're talking as a coma, he was what they call is on the Glasgow scale is a stage 4 coma. Basically, he had no movement, no eye movement, nothing. He was just basically laying there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so my logical mind, now you got to go, oh my gosh. Okay, he wasn't the critical part of him dying at that point was basically over. But now you had to come to the realization he could be in a coma for the rest of his life. This could be the rest of his life. And really, I remember kind of grappling with that of that reality or possibility. And it's like, holy smokes, what do you do? And so when we look at the whole coma process, it wasn't, he came out of his coma 2.5 months, but it was probably for the first 2 months, he had no movement, nothing.
Nothing.
So you just didn't know he had a trach and a feeding tube. Now, the only positive side about a trach and a feeding tube, dinner was pretty easy. Cleanup was very quick. But I mean, so, you go through these gyrations. How do you make light of the seriousness of the situation? But I remember him coming out of the coma. I remember it was his right hand. I remember just watching his finger move ever so slightly. We were like, oh my gosh, this is cool. It just kind of left the ray of hope. If that can happen, then other things can happen.
Absolutely.
So what was the first communication coming out of the, maybe I'll ask you, Austin, coming out of the coma, what was one of the first communications, or mom and dad?
So when I came out of the coma, I couldn't walk or talk. So everything had to be processed and learned again. But apparently I could still write. So I wrote on a notepad, where am I? What am I doing here? And then I still read what they wrote me. So.
Oh, okay. So
and I was in the room when a group of classmates from Austin's school came up, and there were about, I'd say 5 or 6 of them in his room at Health South. And I can remember a little boy, his dad was a physician, and but he was in Austin's face like, hi, Austin, how you doing? What's going, and I just, no expression, like the lights are on but no one's home. His eyes were open, but not really responding. All of a sudden he got this grimace on his face. It was like the worst. He looked like he was in pain, like he was going to cry, like, and I'm like, what's going on? And I was kind of freaking out. But that was a good sign. That was the nurses told us that this is a good sign. He's coming out of the coma. And what happened is they had a group of physiatrists and OT, speech therapy. They were all trying to do coma arousal therapy. And it wasn't until I believe the physiatrist, they decided to try Ritalin. And Ritalin got the synapses firing, evidently, and that's what woke him up, I believe, out of the coma. It was a series of things, but the Ritalin, I think, is what was the impetus to get him starting to wake up. And after that time, we had to keep everything quiet, lights down, quiet music, not a lot of noise, and that started it. So it's not like the movies where they all of a sudden just wake up and I'm here.
So it had to be a
there at
natural
Applebee's or something. Yeah.
So that leads us to some of the challenges, Austin, that you have faced from the time the transition coming out of the coma until even now. But how has life been, with physical, mental, school, friends, and some of your social life, and looking at you, and folks, you don't have the privilege of seeing this beautiful family here on screen, but they're certainly happy folks. And I know, Austin, just looking at you, you're very, very happy to be here, to say the least. And you've got a happy smile on your face. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, it's been a journey for sure. life since my coma. I woke up, was homeschooled all throughout middle school, had a social life a little bit, and then towards high school, going back to Charlotte High School, I remember like having a tough time like reacquainting myself with people, like people I knew before my accident, like who I haven't seen like a bunch of years. And that was kind of like little downgrading, kind of made me like self-conscious, a little bit intimidated to talk to people. But I mean, I still had a few friends. Towards the end of my high school career, I earned my Eagle Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout, and worked on that for a few years. And when I was out of high school, we moved to Colorado. I thought I wanted to go to college, but school wasn't really for me. I took a year off after high school, and
I'm
Not
still
good.
taking time off after high school, so I'm with you there.
Yeah. Towards the end of Austin's high school year, his coach came. One of the coaches at school came to Austin. We had done a video. I think you saw the video of Austin. He was actually raising money. That video was done to get his Eagle Scout award. He raised over, how much was it?
$14,000.
$15,000. His goal was $2,500 to build picnic tables at the Ronald McDonald House. But with that video and a huge front page article in the Charlotte Sun, we got so many donations came pouring in, because when you mentioned Boy Scouts of America and Ronald McDonald House at the time, everyone was just more than happy to contribute. And,
absolutely.
But I say all that to say the principal actually ended up seeing the video too. And they asked Austin if he would speak to a group of students, English class students.
Wow.
So Austin, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, it was a long day. I had no class that day. They let me just like tell my story to about 700 of my colleagues in high school, and that was very inspiring for me to share my story with all my people I didn't even know, and they all wrote me letters. So it's really cool.
Yeah, part of the assignment was to write, what did Austin's talk mean to you? And then they gave us a copy of it, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So that was kind of the beginning of his speaking career.
Good, Austin.
Yeah.
So were you nervous that first time you had to speak in front of people?
Yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Talking for the first time in front of a lot of people. But as I moved out here to Colorado, I also started my own business, my motivational speakers bureau, Bump on the Head. And I spoke like around Colorado. I've been like a ton of prisons. I've been like corporations. I went back to Florida and kind of spoke all up and down the West Coast. It was really nice.
Very good.
And last year he got to speak at the Special Olympics. Law enforcement is a huge advocate for Special Olympics.
Torch run, yeah.
And the torch run and some different things. And he got to speak in front of, there's about 1,200 law enforcement professionals from all over the world. And basically did a tremendous job of being able to uplift them for what they do, but also inspiring them to continue making Special Olympics such a big part of their fundraising.
Yes. Yeah.
How can you not be inspired by all this? This is fantastic. Yeah.
And
who needs college, by the way? I mean, you're doing great.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love the name of your the Speakers Bureau, Bump on the Head. That's something. Yes. Okay. Very well. And you know,
one of these days he's going to write a book, What I Learned from a Bump on the Head.
Oh yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like
absolutely.
it.
Yeah. I was going to ask about a book, if it's in the works or even in your mind, all three of you, if there's a book
Yep.
that might be in the works.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started to write a book, and then got distracted and kind of put it on the wayside right now, but
Yeah.
hopefully soon I'll get one cranking out.
Well, good.
Just,
Good.
yeah.
We all
Awesome,
get
buddy.
distracted, so.
Uh,
I
Awesome.
did want to add about along this journey, I really believe that God was just a big, huge part of this, watching over everything. When Austin was in the hospital, they wanted to send him home with a trach and a feeding tube to our house in a coma. And I know, and we had angels watching over us. I just know that. And then a lady came to Dallas one day at a hospital and said, we can get Austin into Health South, because normally they would not take someone in a coma. But because there was only one other child in the pediatric ward of Health South in Largo, they decided to take him. And we are forever grateful.
Yes.
We are just so many things have come along that on this journey. And when he woke up from the coma, we're like, okay, we know we know things can change. We just had that feeling of this is not as good as it gets. And then started the journey of therapy and brain integration therapy and other types of therapy, neurofeedback when we came out to Colorado Springs. So we have always been on a journey and always been looking for ways to help Austin get better. And he has made tremendous progress.
Mm-hmm. And then while all that was going on, he was 2.5 months in the coma. You thought, God, what do you have for us? What the whys are there? I'm sure they were just firing in your brains left and right, the why of all this. And then now on this side of how old are you now, Austin?
I am 27.
27. Okay. And this happened when you were about 8 or 9. When did this happen? 10 years old. So then now on this side of all that, you're praising God for the opportunities to speak with people with traumatic brain injuries and the recovery. So you are a great spokesperson for this, to say that, hey, well, folks, I know you're going through a hard time now, but look, things can and will get better. And your tenacity, man, you had to have something inside of you, Austin, that said, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to do it. I'm not. Is that right? Am I right?
I had a huge feeling of like perseverance. I'm always trying new things and never giving up.
That's great.
Yeah. When doctors probably, they may not have said this to you, but this is your plateau. This is your plateau. And what did you say?
I said, no way.
No way.
There's always room for improvement. I mean,
and mom and dad are smiling now. They know your tenacity and everything. Yeah, that's good.
All right, that'll do it for part 1 of our interview with Austin Dallas and Shelly Shepard from HarmonizedBrainCenters.com. And is it not amazing what God can do in a situation that you never saw coming at you? A situation that any of us would categorize as a tragedy, and how he can turn it into something that has been a blessing to so many people and so many lives being touched by Austin himself, just him alone. It's fantastic to see what God does in these situations. So tune in next week for part 2. And as Red used to say, good night and may God bless.
Guests on the Afternoon Coffee podcast stay at the Real Rest Inns and Suites, the only 2-star hotel in the tri-state area with a don't ask, don't tell policy for snakes and other exotic pets.
This episode has been made possible by our awesome intro voice, Heather Foster. You can find out more about her at heatherfostervoice.com. All music has been provided and produced by Marble Planet Productions. You can hear more about them on Instagram at Marble Planet Productions. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can either email us at afternooncoffeepodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at afternoonjava.